In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to edit an existing form in Formspace. So in order to be able to do this, you'll have to have the editing right. And as soon as you have that, you will see a new tab over here on the left called Manage once you get into Formspace. If you don't see that, then just reach out to me, Cindy Tucker, and I can fix that for you. So we're going to go ahead and click in Manage. Our forms are organized in a variety of categories. Right now, we're going to look under District Forms and General Forms. There are other categories here, but we are heading over to the Vehicle Reservation form to make our edits. So I've expanded all these folders out and I find the form itself. Across the top, you'll see a few tabs, and then you'll see some important tools up here in the upper right-hand corner. The General tab is where you can edit the title, the category it falls under, and then a description if needed. We're going to spend our time on questions, and then we'll take a very brief look at the workflow. Don't worry about data and printing or settings at this point. So what we need to do is come in and make just a couple of important edits to this particular form. But it is good to know that we have a number of question types, and we use the word question. I really think that should be more like content blocks or something like that, because one of the question types is this text block. Well, it's not really a question. It's just information that you as the editor are going to provide for people who are completing the form. So one of the things we want to do is to update this because we've got some new information we would like to add. So to edit something that's already here, we will click this little pencil icon that's associated with the question type. So as soon as we do this, I'm actually going to come in here and paste in 2 new bits of information that we need to include on this. So when we are finished with the editing right here, we click the Finished button, and then you'll see we've added that. There are times you might want to preview what it's really going to look like for an end user who's completing it. It looks very similar to this. It just doesn't have the editing tools and it doesn't have all of the organization here. So if you want to see what it's going to look like to the end user, you can click Preview and it's going to pop into a window like this. Another change we need to make on this form is to edit these times. So you can only pick up keys now between 7 and 3:30 instead of 6 and 4:30. So again, we're going to click Edit and we're going to just update that time period. And we click Finished. I'm going to go ahead and show you how to add another question. So when you click Add Question, it's going to go to the very bottom of the page, always. So when I click into this drop-down field, I see multiple options from our, I'm doing air quotes, questions. I do like to point out that moving questions around on the page can sometimes be difficult. It just is a little bit awkward. So to do that, you click on this little box and you come down and you find, let's say we wanted to do this new question that we were going to actually have it. You would click on whatever question type it was and you would use the blue arrows to move them up throughout the form. If you had multiple pages on a form, you would do the same thing and then you would hit Save. So now let's jump into the Workflow tab and spend just a minute talking about this. There has to be a workflow for every single form, and by default, the workflow is titled Default. We've not changed this on 99% of our forms, and that's fine. So to edit it, or even to view it, you need to double click where it says the title of that form. It's a little bit strange, but that's how it works. And then it opens a new window with a General tab and a Workflow tab. On the General tab, if you want to change the name of the workflow itself, you can. Like I said, we've not done that on very many at all. But you should look down here for the all schools and limit to the following schools. This form was set up to limit to specific schools. If you take a look though, every single campus or school is selected. So my recommendation on a form that you want every campus to have access to is to actually switch it to where it says all schools. The benefit of this is that when we add a new school next year, that school will be included on this form. If we have selected the schools individually and we add a new campus, that campus will not be selected. I'm going to, in this case, change it to all schools, and then I'm going to go into the workflow tab. So the workflow actually lists the steps that are part of the workflow. As we look at this workflow, we see that there are 2 approval steps and 1 notification step. In the first approval step, when we select it, it's going to give us some information down here at the bottom. This is a step that means once the person submits the form, it's going to go to a person or persons, and there has to be an action before it moves on. The approver is either going to approve it or deny it, and that will make the next step happen. In this case, this is being approved by the Principals 2023-2024 custom group. That custom group is managed in another application in Eduphoria, so you don't need to worry about that. But there is one thing to notice. These are all the possible groups. We've got the Principals 23-24 group selected, but by default, and this is a good thing, this is checked to limit to school. What this means is if a teacher from Bryson submits this request, it is going to go to the person in this group that is associated with Bryson. If that is not checked, and it's checked to require all, that means every person in the principal group must approve, like all of them, before it moves on. So we want to make sure we leave it to limit to school when we have a group like this. As soon as the principal of the associated campus approves it, then it's going to move to the vehicle checkout group. As soon as they approve it, in this case, it's going to send a notification to the requester. This is actually not a necessary step because by default, the requester is going to get an email once the form is submitted, and it is going to get an email once the form is completed. So we could leave this in here. It's not going to send 2 emails to them, but it's not really necessary because that's a built-in component. To add another workflow step, you just click here and you can choose an approval step, a notification step, or a free flow step. The free flow step allows a user to make a decision in the process of this workflow to send it to someone else or to make a copy or something like that. If we have a step that we want to delete, we just highlight it and click delete workflow. If we need to rearrange this process, so the steps, let's say I want the vehicle checkout group to approve it before the principal. I click it and I use the blue arrow to move it up in the process. I actually don't want that, so I'll move it right back down. There is a button up here that says reprocess. Use this with caution. If you reprocess, what it's going to do is it's going to look for every single vehicle reservation form that's in process, and it's going to start them all over at the beginning of the process. You aren't going to want to do this very often, but there may be a time when one of the approval steps was an individual instead of a group. And if that individual no longer works here and the form is stuck waiting for them, we have to get creative about it. You can reach out to me and I can help with that. Or we change this process, change it to another person, and then we click reprocess. Just be aware it's going to reprocess every single form in this category, meaning in this case, it would go back to the principals. And if all the principals have already approved it, then they're going to get another one. It's going to start back over. So just use it with caution. I'm going to head back into the General tab and hit Save because I did make one change. The last thing I will point out is that we've made all these changes, and that's great, but the end user isn't going to see those changes until we hit Publish. So it asks, are you sure you want to? And we say yes, and we're going to go ahead and publish this. This does take a while, so be prepared to sit and wait for a few minutes because it's taking its own sweet time and making sure it's done correctly. So that gives you an idea of how to edit an existing form in Formspace. If you have any other questions, just let me know.